around what this is, and it's not something that very few human beings ever get to experience. A very, very, very tiny percentage of our population worldwide is ever put in a position like you're put into. So
let's look at your position. I mean, I asked you this at one time. So you last time we talked, I think you were getting something approximately 100 million downloads a month on your podcast. What are your figures? If you don't mind, what are your figures like? Oh, double that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Jesus Christ, that's just unbelievable.
Especially with YouTube, with YouTube and all the YouTube clips, and it's actually probably more than that. It's nuts. It's gotten to the point where I try to pay as little attention to the numbers as possible and just concentrate on doing the show. Because I think if I pay attention to it too much, excuse me, I think if I pay attention to it too much, I might lose my mind. I mean, it's untenable. There's just the sheer volume of human beings. If you were ever on a stage and you were looking out at 300 million people, what would that look like? I mean, it's not 300 million people because it's 300 million downloads in a month, but the real number of human beings you're interacting with, I mean, I don't know what that is. Is it 50 million people? I don't know how many actual million people are listening to the show or watching the show on a regular basis, but it's an unmanageable number in terms of like reading comments or trying to pay attention to what they want or what they don't want. It's very strange.
Yes, it's a very weird position to be in. There's no doubt. And the strange thing is that, well, we've talked about this before too. Like, this is early days, right? I mean, this has only been happening for about, how long have you been doing your YouTube videos?
The YouTube videos are only a few years. I think it's only 3 or 4 years. The podcast will be 10 years in December.
Right. Okay. So 10 years, that's starting to become a decent chunk of life, but 3 or 4 years, that's still new. And then, I mean, the podcast market and the YouTube market they're brand new technologies fundamentally.
Fundamentally. And now you're seeing corporations trying to capitalize on it. And, I've started to get these very bizarre offers to make my podcast exclusive on this platform or that platform. And, these companies they're throwing crazy amounts of money around at podcast networks, hundreds of millions of dollars to buy podcast networks. So it's becoming very, very strange, because what was a joke 5 or 6 years ago, literally, like, why are you wasting your time doing a podcast? I used to hear that all the time. Now it's, how did you do this? How did you make this podcast so popular? Now you get a totally different question.
Yeah, well, it's so strange because so many people nobody realized that there was an audience for on-demand audio. And you see the same thing in the book world,
right? Not only that, but not just on-demand audio, but long-form conversation.
Yeah.
Even my friend Ari, who's one of my best friends, would always tell me, you got to edit your shows. Nobody wants to listen to anything that's 3 hours long. So I'd say, well, then they don't have to listen. And he's like, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I'm like, I don't think I am. Like, why not? If someone only has an hour, then listen to it for an hour. Like, you're not going to, you might miss out some information, but it's not going to change your life. Like, do whatever you want to do. But I like talking to people for long periods of time, because I think you really only get cooking after like the first half hour, 40 minutes. That's when you get comfortable. You sort of get into a groove of communication, of figuring out this person's rhythm and thought processes. And and then as you expand on these ideas and you share information back and forth with each other, after an hour and a half, 2 hours, that's when things really start getting deep. And oftentimes the last hour of a 3-hour podcast is the best hour.
Yeah, well, that intuition was certainly right and revolutionary. You never know when you come up with a revolutionary idea.
Part of my revolutionary idea is just me being stubborn. It's just like, I didn't care. I wasn't doing it for money. So the only reason why I was doing it is because I enjoyed talking to people like you or many of my other guests. I want to talk to, it's a very rare opportunity where I would get a chance to sit down with someone like you with no distractions, no other people in the room, no cell phones, and just talk for 3 hours. Yeah. That's so unusual in our world and our constantly distracted world. And I think I've gotten a fantastic education because of that. I mean, it's really enlightened me on so many different subjects and expanded my understanding of people in general.
And conspiracy theories. I mean, man, you're up on those. Like,
I've got some of those too.
Yeah, so that's it's important to be up on the conspiracy theories just to keep track of the damn things.
Well, you got to know what people think of you. You know,
Yeah.
I've been lately. I'm a Zionist shill. This is the most recent one. I didn't know it was a Zionist shill.
Oh yeah, you're a Zionist shill. Yeah.
I'm a white supremacist too, depending on who you ask.
Yeah. Well, I've got those two things as well. So, and it's like, it's real interesting to be able to juggle both of those identities. It's like,
yeah, good luck with that.
One day, white supremacist the next. It's sort of like being gender fluid, except on the political spectrum.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, why do you have to be conservative or Democrat? You know, some